Welcome to Spirits Podcast, a boozy dive into mythology, legends, and folklore. Every week we pour a drink and learn about a new story from around the world. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Julia.
And this is episode 193, Norse Cosmology with Moiya McTier.
Moiya was such a delight to have on, and I want to talk to her over cocktails every single day.
I was so excited when she emailed us, and just the words folklorist and astrophysicist in the same email made me want to be her best friend. And it absolutely lived up to the hype. We talk about Norse cosmology and map it onto our own solar system. So you'll learn a little bit about Norse mythology. You'll learn a little bit about space. You'll hear both of us be like, holy shit, I can't believe that life is possible in those vast wilds. Mm-hmm. And it's just lovely and hopefully a nice little break in your week.
Yeah, seriously, Moiya told us a couple of facts where I was just like, what? No. What? Science? No.
And Moiya has a fantastic podcast that you can subscribe to when you absolutely fall in love with her in this episode. It's called Exolore. It's so good.
EXOLORE. Guess what? It's about space and also lore stuff.
Amazing. And do you know what is also amazing, Julia?
Is it our new patrons, Amanda?
Our new patrons, Grave Noise Press, Dustin, Sweet Servaday, Blue Knight, Krista, Denise, and Austin. Welcome. Thank you.
What a good squad of well-named people.
Extremely good. You join the ranks of such patrons as our supporting producer level patrons: Philip, Alicia, Deborah, Hannah, Jen, Jessica, Keegan, Landon, Megan Linger, Megan Moon, Molly, Mr. Folk, Neil, Nikki, Phil Fresh, Polly, Sarah, and Skyla.
I have a little dance I do whenever you list off the supporting producer level patrons because it's just like there's such a good bounce to it, such a good rhythm.
There really is. And then, of course, it would not be an episode of Spirits without thanking our legend-level patrons: Audra, Avonlea, Chelsea, Clara, Donald, Drew, Eden, Francis, Jack Marie, Josie, Lotta, Mark, Morgan, Necrofancy, Sarah, and BM Me Up Scotty.
BM Me Up Scotty always coming in at the clutch at the end there.
Thank you all for your support. This is our job, and you make it possible for us to do this every week, and we would not be here without you. So thank you so much.
You rock, just like the rocks in space. Get it?
Oh, beautiful. Julia, you're a person of great taste. Would you please tell us what else you have been reading, listening to, or watching this week?
Oh, man. Speaking of rocks in space, Amanda, I just finished a fantastic book called The First Sister by Linden A. Lewis. And it is like there are meld-minding assassin pairs. There is like beautiful subterfuge in like kind of a Handmaid's Tale way, but also in space and religion. My two favorite things are combining space and religion together. And it's just delightful and a great, great read. I read in like 2 days and it was fantastic.
You also showed me the cover on a call we had the other day, and it is a beautiful book.
It is so pretty. It is so pretty. I love it so much. Linden did a fantastic job. They are excellent.
So check that out at your local indie bookstore. And if you want to find out the closest bookstore to you or buy it online, go to spiritspodcast.com/books, where we have a link to all of the books we've recommended, as well as books by our guests on bookshop.org, which is a fantastic website that's like a co-op for indie bookstores and kind of distributes profits amongst all of them, which is amazing.
I forgot the link was just books. And I was like, oh, there's not more of that. Yes, it's just books. Love it.
It's just books. Merch is just merch. I do my best.
Great.
And speaking of great links to go to, multitude.productions/digital live is one that you are going to want to check out. After we did the Multitude Live Online show, it was so much fun. It was incredible. We've been able to donate $1,300 to the Black Lives Matter Global Network, which is amazing. And we're going to continue to make donations because 25% of all of the sales of our video of that live stream are going to be continued to be donated. So help us raise that total. I want to get to $2,000. I think we can do it. Go to multitude.productions/digital live to grab a copy of the video replay of our 2-hour-long live stream. There were 4 segments. All 6 multitudes were in it. It was incredible.
It's a lot of fun. I think our myth that we made for the spirit segment was delightful, and I want to tell it around a campfire one of these days.
Incredible. So thank you to everybody who attended live, who has bought the replay. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to making hopefully many more donations in the future.
Yes, please. And I just wanted to address something. In last week's episode, we talked a lot about suicide because of the nature and language of the Invisible Man movie, and I used the term committed suicide. A couple of listeners pointed out that this term isn't really used anymore as it stigmatizes mental illness, and we talk a lot about mental health on the show, and suicide has impacted both of our lives, so we weren't aware about the move away from that term, but we are now, so moving forward, we're going to do our best to be more conscious of the way that we choose to talk about it.
Absolutely. So now we hope that you enjoy Spirits Podcast, episode 193, Norse Cosmology with Moiya McTier. We have on today maybe the best combination of words I've ever heard, which is astrophysicist and folklorist Moiya McTier. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me and responding to my urgent plea to be on your show.
No, it was delightful.
Yeah, the moment we saw your YouTube channel and your podcast, we were like, this person needs to come on the show.
Oh, I'm honored.
Tell us a little bit about what we are going to be learning today.
Yeah, so I'm an astrophysicist and a folklorist, and I like to combine them whenever possible. And it was one of your suggestions, but it was also something that I had been thinking about in the back of my mind for a long time. So I'm glad we meshed on those. But today we're going to be talking about the various worlds of Norse cosmology myths. Norse cosmogony? Yeah.
Ooh. I like it. Make new words. Every day we should be making new words.
Exactly.
We haven't touched on Norse mythology in a while, so I'm very, very glad that you're here to give us a guide through the worlds of Norse mythology. It's a topic I need to learn more about.
It's been really fun. I think that this month might just be like my Norse/Iceland month, because I just recently did an interview about the Iceland Penis Museum and ancient Icelandic magical rituals. It was just
okay, tell us about the Penis Museum real quick.
We need to know, please.
Oh, it's amazing. It's in Reykjavik, and it has 300 different penis specimens, and they range from full penises to just parts of penis bones. And what they've done is try to gather specimens from all of the land and sea mammals that you can find in Iceland, including humans.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that was when you're an organ donor and it says so on your driver's license. And they're like, well, we do need this one organ. Please and thank you.
There is an amazing documentary that you can watch, I think, on YouTube about their quest to get a human specimen. I think it's called The Final Member.
Oh my God. That is the best title I have ever heard.
We'll link it in the show notes. That's very good.
Great.
So Moiya, how did you get into astrophysics and also folklore? How did those two kind of combine? How did you start studying them? I'm very curious.
I followed my stomach. So I went to Harvard, where when you want to study two things at once, you have to write a thesis that sits at the intersection of your two fields. So there's actually a pre-approved list of double majors. Surprise, surprise, astro and folklore was not on that list.
Come on.
But both of them are two of the smallest departments at the school. So I went to the heads of both departments and I said, you really can't afford to lose a body, so let me study both of you, and we all win. My thesis ended up being a science fiction novel that was set on a planet that I researched, and the plot was based on ethnography work that I did in Hawaii to cover this conflict that was going on where astronomers were trying to build a telescope on top of a sacred mountain.
Yeah.
The 30-meter telescope conflict. Yeah. So that was what I did. And to get there, it was pizza that took me to astronomy, and it was tea and cakes that took me to folklore.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
What a great background and a great story. Now I want to go back to college real bad. We keep interviewing guests recently where I'm just like, you make me want to go back and get a graduate degree and stuff like that. Please. I don't have the budget for it.
Did you hear about the pizza and cakes though?
Yes, pizza and cakes.
I still get a lot of pizza as a grad student. We have pizza lunch every Tuesday in grad school.
I like that.
But not as many cakes, which is disappointing.
I feel like pizza is more of a casual thing and cake is more celebratory. So I can understand that.
Yeah, there's nowhere near as much celebration in grad school as there is in college.
Ooh. Ouch.
Sometimes you have to bring your own cakes,
Yeah. Sometimes it's just cupcake time. Small celebrations.
I love cupcake time.
There you go.
I'm going to make that a regular addition to my schedule.
Very good.
But in terms of inventing the thing that you wish to see in the world, how about that?
Ooh.
I never knew I wanted to know about the astrophysics of the Norse world, but now I need to. So take it away. I am your student today.
Oh my. Okay. I will try to take this responsibility and use it wisely. So first, when you're talking about Norse mythology, including their creation myths, most of what we know comes from the Eddas, the prose and poetic Eddas, which were collections of stories and knowledge that had been passed down from generation to generation orally for a long time, but were officially written down between the 11th and 13th centuries. But I think both of them were written down by Christians. And so a lot of what you find in the Eddas isn't necessarily like true, authentic Norse myths because they were written in a Christian context for a Christian audience. And so there's some stuff that's definitely been changed or is missing because it just didn't fit with the Christian theme.
Yeah. As we like to say on the show, lol, it's not pagan, it's fine. The Christianity story.
I want that on a t-shirt. Actually, I don't. I really don't.
I know. Like you say it more than once and you're like, wait, this is a horrible sentiment and I don't want to put it out into the world. But in context on the show, that is the joke.
Yes. And it's so catchy. I really like the way it sounds. So the Eddas have a lot of really cool information in them. They talk about these 9 different worlds of Norse cosmology. And these worlds are, it's hard to tell if they actually mean different worlds like parallel universes or planets, which is what I think of as worlds and coming from an astronomy context. But they use worlds or realms. And these 9 worlds are attached to Yggdrasil, the origin tree, the life tree, the cosmic tree, and they're attached to the branches and the roots of Yggdrasil. And interestingly, the Eddas don't say anything about how Yggdrasil was created. It just seems to have always been there, which is pretty cool. But they also don't explicitly mention the names of all 9 worlds. And so scholars who are trying to learn more about Norse mythology have had to go back and kind of piece together, based on vague mentions and references that they find in the Eddas and in other texts that are more scattered. They've had to piece together what the identities of these different worlds might have been. And it's changed over time, and we have no way of knowing if we're totally correct.
Gotta love that about folklore. Just be like,
yeah,
we think we know what we're talking about 90% of the time. Like, these stories have to come from somewhere. We just don't ever have the full picture of it. And that's why studying it makes it so interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. And you get cool bedtime stories to tell at night.
That's always true.
Fun stuff.
I know, but it makes sense to me that someone wouldn't think to write down the like basic obvious facts that, contextualize the specific story they were telling, and explain, like, it's as if you start reading someone's journal in the middle and they're like, oh yes, my father, Brian, and like give you a helpful signpost. Like that's not how records work. That's not how people's lives or people think about their lives necessarily while they're in the middle of them.
Yeah. No one's saying like, as we all know, the 9 realms are, and then lists them. You have to use the context.
Yeah, and because it was an oral tradition, as different people are telling these stories and passing on this information, they'll leave out stuff that they don't like. Or the way I like to imagine oral storytelling is like, if you're just not particularly comfortable telling a part of the story because you haven't practiced it enough, like maybe you won't tell that part of the story when you're visiting a certain town. And so the people in that town just won't know that information and it'll get changed, and you'll like... There's like a science word where like you have gaps between pieces of data and you like figure out what should bridge the gap. Yeah. It starts with interpolate. That's what it is.
Ooh,
you'll like interpolate the data. Look at me bringing in my my science background. Anyway, so yeah, that's oral storytelling. And when you get it written down, there's stuff missing.
There you go.
So I really wanted to avoid a section of this where I was just like listing out the names of the 9 worlds, but I feel like I have to
do
name
it.
The 9 worlds.
Someone has to, please. Like we just said, someone in oral history has to say all the things so that we know about them.
Yeah, and in 1,000 years, when people are listening to this episode of Spirits, they'll have this information. No pressure.
No pressure.
I, Amanda McLaughlin, co-host of Spirits in the year 2020.
This is why we say our names at the beginning of each episode. You never know when someone's going to jump in.
Okay, so the 9 worlds, the most widely known probably is Midgard. I mean, if you've seen the Thor movies from the Marvel universe, you have likely heard of Midgard and Asgard. So Midgard
Red
is...
Loki fan fiction. Yes,
the usual.
Yes. Right. Midgard being the home of the humans, and that's connected to Asgard by the bridge, the rainbow bridge called Bifrost. And Asgard is the home of the Aesir, which is just one of the tribes of gods. I didn't know before I started researching for this episode, so that was really cool. There's another group of gods called the Vanir, and they live in Vanaheim. The Vanir are gods of things like wisdom and healing, and they also have the ability to see into the future, which is pretty dope. Like, if I had to choose which one I'd want to be, I'd probably choose Vanir.
You know, but then you're burdened with the knowledge of what is to come. And, you know, I think about how, like, precognition is probably, like, the worst superpower you could have because you can't really change things. And anyway, I could go on.
Just like quick aside, the way I see that is if I suddenly had the ability to see the future as like the only human who could do that, I think that would be really sucky. Yeah. But if I came from a whole group of people who culturally knew how to deal with that burden of knowledge, I think that would be pretty great.
That is a good point. I'm used to like X-Men style where it's like I am burdened with this gift, but a whole society knowing what the future is going to be is probably really nice.
Yeah.
You're prepared for everything.
I know. That's giving me like strong The Giver vibes. And a society that has infrastructure around something like that is a thing I would read many novels about.
Yeah.
Amanda, a while back, my cousin texted me and it was like, hey, I was listening to your ads for spirits because he's a very good cousin. And he's like, I thought you were doing a ad for Vermont. And I was like, no. That was for Sun Soil because I love Sun Soil and I love Vermont. So Sun Soil is in fact in lovely Vermont, but they are a company that is down to earth and doing things differently when it comes to CBD. They make CBD oil that is USDA certified organic. They grow the hemp on their farms in Vermont, beautiful, beautiful Vermont. And they never use pesticides, herbicides, or GMOs. They keep it super simple. In fact, most of their CBD products have just 2 simple ingredients, coconut oil and hemp. And they are surprisingly affordable because they farm their own hemp and they stick to these simple ingredients, so they're able to offer high quality CBD at half the price of other brands. I really like, as I've said before on the show, the cinnamon flavored drops that I can put into my tea right before I go to bed. So it just like calms and soothes me because tea and also CBD, and it makes it really easy for me to fall asleep, which is usually a big problem.
Yeah, it has genuinely been a huge help for my insomnia. And if this is something that you have been curious about, you can learn more about the company, their dedication to being clean and sustainable, their lab testing, and also what CBD is and how you might be able to use it at sunsoil.com/spirits, where you'll also get 30% off your first order.
Yep, that's Sunsoil, sunsoil.com/spirits for 30% off your first order.
Thanks, Sunsoil. Julia, I have never been more grateful to be in therapy. I definitely see it as something like a workout or like a moment of, having that calming bath in your week where it is just for you. It's a time to focus on yourself and your health and your goals. And I do that via BetterHelp because it is hard to find a therapist. It's hard to find affordable therapy. And particularly now when we want to reduce unnecessary trips, it's really, really helpful to be able to do therapy from the comfort of my own home. They are a secure counseling service where you can start communicating in under 48 hours with a professional counselor. There are tons of ranges of expertise available. So in the onboarding process, you can write if there are anything specifically you're looking for or therapists who have certain identities or certain trainings and sensitivities. And it's really awesome to be able to do that. Trust me, there's not like a network of therapists to search for in traditional offline counseling. And it's also much more expensive than an option like BetterHelp. And they even offer financial aid, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, so if you would like to start living a happier life today, you can visit BetterHelp. You can read their testimonials at betterhelp.com/reviews. And if you visit betterhelp.com/spirits, that's betterhelp.com/spirits, you can join over 1 million people who are taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Absolutely. They're adding new counselors all the time as well. They're recruiting extra ones in all 50 states right now. So go to betterhelp.com/spirits for 10% off your first month.
betterhelp.com/spirits for 10% off your first month.
And finally, we are sponsored by Third Love. This is a company, Julia, that when I heard about it, I was like, man, I hope these bras are actually comfortable. Spoiler, listener, they are. They are doing bras differently because they believe that everybody deserves to feel comfortable and confident every day. And if you're wearing a bra, that doesn't mean it should stop you from feeling comfortable and wanting to like race home to take it off as soon as possible. They are designing bras to fit you and your body rather than the other way around. They have over 80 different bra sizes, which is incredible because it's not not just like ABCD cup for a range of like 6 band sizes. Like who does that fit? That doesn't help anybody. And in fact, their Fit Finder quiz makes sure that you are choosing the one that's right for you. You answer a few simple questions to find your perfect fit in 60 seconds. It's actually very fun. It's just a little like quiz about me and my preferences, and it's wonderful. And it again actually takes less than a minute to complete.
Yeah, I never thought I would have fun telling a website about the size and shape and, balance of my boobs, but here we are.
They're just like, what's your boob situation? And then they give you the bra that you need.
Yeah, and the best part is they stand behind their products. If you don't love it, every customer has 60 days to return their bra, and Third Love wash it and then donate it to a person in need. And they have a bunch of like fit stylist experts who are dedicated to helping you find the perfect fit for your boobs.
So if you need to chat or email, those fit stylists are available, and returns and exchanges are always free, and they're very easy to do, which is awesome.
Yeah. So Third Love knows that there is a perfect bra for everyone. So right now they are offering our listeners 15% off your first order. You just have to go to thirdlove.com/spirits now to find your perfect fitting bra and get 15% off your first purchase.
That's thirdlove.com/spirits for 15% off today.
Huzzah.
And now let's get back to the show.
I love it.
So the other realms are Muspelheim. Also, if I'm pronouncing these incorrectly, which is highly likely, I apologize. But I'm not Icelandic or Swedish or anything. I don't have that tongue.
That's okay.
Muspelheim is the land of primordial fire and chaos. It's where demons come from. You have Elfheim, which is the land of the elves. Svartalfheim, the home of the dwarves. Jotunheim, the home of the giants. Helheim, the home of the dishonorable dead.
Ooh.
Oh.
The honorable dead are kept in Asgard with Odin and the other Aesir. And then there's Niflheim, which is the second primordial world, and it's the world of ice and fog. So it's the polar opposite of Muspelheim.
Gotcha. The fire land and the ice land. Got it.
Yeah.
Elemental planes. I like it.
Exactly. So when I look at these 9 worlds, I like to see parallels to the bodies in our solar system. Although it's important to note that these Germanic people didn't have information about the details of the planets. I mean, only 5 of them are visible with the unaided eye. So if you have like really good eyesight, you can see Uranus, but you can't really see Neptune. You definitely can't see Pluto, which isn't a planet, but like we're gonna count it here.
And it's in our hearts.
It's on my body. I have it tattooed. Like it counts. I love Pluto. It counts. So they didn't have knowledge about the details of these planets. And I also think it's important to note that even though we call the planets, like we named the planets after Roman gods, they definitely didn't always have those names. Like Venus wasn't always called Venus.
Sure.
Mercury wasn't always called Mercury. It wasn't until the International Astronomical Union, the IAU, came together and like officially created the names that astronomers all over the world use for these bodies that we decided to call them these Roman names.
I didn't know that was a thing, but now that I do, I'm very happy about it. It's very cool.
Yeah. I have my own tiny aside, which is I'm reading Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff right now, which is a wonderful book about the life of Cleopatra. And it takes place largely in the last century BCE. And I had not really understood the dynamic between Greece and Rome in that time. And sort of as a kid, you learn about them both as like great old societies. We're done. But at the time, there is a ton of like posturing and feeling like Rome is like, well, maybe Greece is nicer than us, but like, fuck you guys, like we're better. And just learning from her, I think Schiff is just such a wonderful historian of like attitude and sense and feeling, and like using historical information to tell us, you know, what it is like and what those attitudes are likely about. And moreover, you know, like written records are all from someone's point of view. So she does a really great job sort of saying like, well, this is from Plutarch and this was his deal. And like Cicero was just like an angry old guy. And, you know, he liked his nephew this week and then the next week really hated him. And like that tells you what you need to know about what Cicero was like and what his judgments are. So anyway, complete aside, but I think it is very funny from this point of view of the book that the planets end up being named after Roman gods, because at least where I'm at in this book, Rome is just like, fuck you, Greece. Okay, fine.
We're better than you. Come on.
Yeah, I guess we would have, I'm trying to think of what the mnemonic device would be if we had named the planets after Greek gods instead. It would be like Hermes, Aphrodite, Earth, because whatever, Aries, like the mnemonic device would just be totally different. I think that
it's a lot more vowels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be like a takeaway project that the listeners can do if they
Plus, you got a Z in there because of Zeus. That's going to be a hot mess of a mnemonic device.
Absolutely. So, like, on kind of the path of what would life be like if we had named the planets after Greek gods instead, I would love to imagine a world where we had mapped the planets and other like celestial objects onto Norse mythology, according to these 9 worlds, which would be really fun. So to me, like the most obvious is that, well, the most obvious is that Midgard is Earth, because like, duh.
It always has been, it always will be, you know.
Yeah. This is where the humans are, unless we find like a secret cache of humans hidden away on Neptune. Like we are Midgard.
You never know, though. You never know.
You never know. That'd be so cool. The next most obvious thing, I think, is that Muspelheim should be the sun.
Okay.
Ooh.
That's the fire one, right?
Yeah, Muspelheim, the land of chaos and fire. Although they do have a goddess named Sol or Sunna. The two have been kind of syncretized depending on, because they changed the name over time. But they have this goddess who's the personification of the sun, and she has her own identity going on. There are lots of really cool stories involving Sol, and so Muspelheim is in no way associated with the sun in Norse mythology, but this is just what I'm doing.
Sure.
So the Eddas say that Muspel was this like really dense, unapproachable realm of fire, and it was one of the first worlds to exist, and the other one being Niflheim, and all of the other stuff, all of the life that we know of kind of sprung up from the realm in between the two, where there was this space where it wasn't too hot and it wasn't too cold. It was just right. And this like primordial ooze happened between Niflheim and Muspelheim. And this to me demonstrates that the Norse people really understood that fire doesn't just destroy, it also creates life.
Yeah.
And the sun is the source of all life here on Earth. So to me, Muspelheim was just like definitely the sun.
Love it. I love this theory. Go for it.
Awesome. Some of my mapping like isn't quite so deep.
Listen, you're our guest. You get to decide the things that you tell us. I'm here for it.
Great. I love that. So the next one is Asgard, which I think should be Mars. Asgard and Midgard are really close to each other. They're connected by this bridge. There is no magical bridge that connects Earth to Mars.
Unfortunately.
I'm really sorry to tell you. But we have sent a lot of robots to Mars, and so it is very easy to get there. And I feel like, based on the descriptions that I've read of Asgard, it seems very Earth-like. Or at least when you look at Asgard in the way it's been depicted in the media, like it's not this land of ice, it's not this land of fog, like it looks like Earth. And Mars, 1 billion years ago or 2 billion years ago, probably was much more like Earth than any of the other bodies in the solar system. It's about Earth-sized, it's made up of similar stuff. I guess the biggest thing that makes it different is that it doesn't have this iron and nickel core that creates this really strong magnetic field. And that meant that Mars lost its atmosphere. So the sun is constantly sending off this wind of charged particles that can strip away gas from planets. It can strip away atmospheres. And Mars, because it didn't have that protective magnetic field, lost its atmosphere. So now it doesn't look anything like Earth. But I feel like, especially since myths talk about things that happened long ago, we can imagine that Mars should be Asgard because it was kind of similar to our planet. Did that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it totally does. And I think, lay people like myself often think of Mars as like a post-Earth, like when an atmosphere it used to have dissolves, kind of what happens to a planet. And similarly, I feel like we are often told that like the lands of gods are what humans could get to or could aspire to, or it's, humanity like accelerated and more virtuous. So it makes total sense to me that would be the pairing.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of one of the Mayan creation stories where they made humans and they're like, oh, wait, these are better than us. Hold on. And they had to remake them all over again. So I can definitely see that.
I love stories of gods making mistakes and then trying to backpedal and just like not doing it very well.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Let's go to the land of the dwarves, the home of the dwarves, Svartalfheim. It's also sometimes called Nidavellir.
Okay.
Nidavellir. So it's the home of the dwarves, and I think that it should be Mercury. Not just because it's the smallest planet, but because the dwarves are masters of craft and smithing, and so they need to be close to the fire of the sun to actually, power their forges, so they can create things like Thor's hammer, and other cool stuff that I'm sure they created. Yeah.
Lots of stuff, not just gauntlets.
Well, yes, exactly. Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, is Jupiter. Because it's the biggest planet.
The big boy, yeah.
It's the big boy. More than 1,000 Earths can fit inside Jupiter. In fact, if you took all of the planets in the solar system and you bunched them together, they could all fit inside Jupiter.
That is very cool. Jupiter's so big. Wild. I can't even comprehend that.
Do you remember in school, Julia, when we did an astronomy presentation on in our soccer fields, and we had people run all the way out to where Pluto would be, and saw the relative distance of all the planets?
Now I do.
That was amazing, but it's even wilder when size is involved. And I feel yes, distance is something, but the relative size of the planets is a thing that no diorama I've ever seen has managed to capture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just like another scale comparison, all of the planets can also fit in between Earth and the moon.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
How is that? How is that possible?
Wait, I need to look up the size of the moon because I just think of him as a close little boy hanging out right there.
So the moon is about a quarter the size of Earth, and it's 250,000 miles away.
Wow.
How did we put a person on there?
What? Whoa. That's so far.
It's so far away.
I know.
I thought the moon was like the Hamptons, and it turns out it's in Turkey.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Wild.
That's wild. Oh my God.
Really, if all of these worlds are on this tree, really makes you think about how big that tree must be.
That's a big tree.
A big fucking tree.
That's very true.
I can't think about space for too long because it all just starts making me feel really small and insignificant, but I love it.
I imagine it might get a little tiring for you to explain very basic parts of your field of study to people, and all of us are like, what the fuck?
No, but
that's
I live
how
for
I feel.
this.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
This is my favorite thing. In fact, I feel like I'm not doing my job if I don't blow people's minds when I talk about space.
You blew our minds today, so that's absolutely something.
You're awesome. Good. You can take the rest of the day off.
Yes. Elfheim, the land of the elves, I think of. So the elves are these beings closely associated with nature and beautiful healing nature things. And so I think that Elfheim would probably map onto Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because Saturn's very pretty and has the rings, but also because it's named after the Roman god of forests and agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So naturey stuff is associated with the elves.
I love it.
Yeah.
Checks out.
Niflheim is Pluto. So Niflheim is the home of this the land of ice and fog.
Mm-hmm.
This super cold place, the polar opposite to Muspelheim.
There we go.
And so it's the polar opposite to the sun because it's kind of the edge of the solar system.
So far away.
The solar system has no edge; it just kind of fizzles out into nothingness. But if it did have an edge, the Pluto might be it. It's just very, very cold there. It's so dark. Sometimes Pluto's very thin atmosphere totally freezes and then falls to the ground as snow. That's how cold it is.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Oh my word. It is the worst form of planetary dandruff. It's like your entire scalp decided to freeze and fall instead of just little parts.
I was picturing something a little more beautiful, but okay. Dandruff. Sure.
It's so extreme. I can't imagine that.
It is extreme. And it could have been a gassy planet. So all of the gas giants from Jupiter out to Neptune, they have these rocky cores and then these big, they're just super big atmospheres. But Pluto's atmosphere froze. And so it's this rocky core. And then about 30% of it is just ice. And then it has this thin atmosphere that occasionally also becomes ice.
That's
amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's Niflheim, very appropriately the land of ice and fog. Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir, is Venus. I just kind of shoehorned that in.
Mm.
I don't have a great reason for it. Like, I feel like it should be close to Asgard and Midgard, so I made it Venus.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because it's kind of bordering Midgard, which I imagine both godly realms would be. And I mean, like, I'm assuming these are like beautiful gods who also see the future. So Venus feels appropriate given the naming convention of Venus being the goddess of love. I like that. Yeah, I'm into it.
Although Venus has such a dense atmosphere that you can't really see through it. And so I feel like this kind of is at odds with their ability to like see through the future. Although maybe not, because like time is this like thick, dense fog that like we humans can't see through, but maybe the Vanir can. So
that was what I was
they're the
say.
only people who could live on Venus.
I love it. Yes.
And if we look at it from a maybe evolutionary perspective, perhaps because their atmosphere is so dense and opaque, they developed these extra extraordinary skills to do so.
It's very cool. Let's build it out. Build that world building.
Go us. And then Helheim, the home of the dishonorable dead, to me is the Oort Cloud. So the Oort Cloud is this giant, diffuse cloud of asteroids and other space rocks. It's outside of Pluto, and it extends out to, I don't know how many miles, but I'm going to tell you it in astronomical units, or AU. And remember that 1 AU is the distance from Earth to the sun.
That's a lot. Okay.
Oort Cloud goes out to like 2,000 AU.
Whoa.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's really far. And there are a lot of rocks there. And every once in a while, those rocks will get disturbed from their orbits around the sun, and they'll fly into the inner solar system, and they'll actually collide with Mars and Venus. Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field kind of protect us from the worst of it. But yeah, they definitely collide with planets in the inner solar system. And I think that this is a good place for Helheim because in the story of Ragnarok, which is the end of the world in Norse mythology, although it's just like end of the world probably isn't the best way to describe it because it's more of like a mass extinction event. Like there is like something after. Yeah, there's something after it.
Time is weirdly cyclical in Norse mythology. So like Ragnarok is the end of time as we know it, but then also after that is the beginning of time as we know it. So it just kind of keeps happening over and over again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love it. It's so cool.
But in the end of our time, in Ragnarok, Hel, who is the leader of Helheim, Odin's daughter, will lead an army of the dead, the dishonorable dead, and attack the gods. And because the gods live on Venus and Mars, and because the Oort Cloud comets will come and collide with Venus and Mars, that's why it's Helheim.
I love it. It's very good.
That's very cool.
It's very
smart. Also makes me think of like asteroids and space debris falling through Earth's atmosphere into Earth. I know they change names as they enter the atmosphere, so I'm not going to embarrass myself and say the wrong one. But I think of those now as hauntings and having the souls or cast off physical matter of the unquiet dead, just reminding us that they are there and striking down upon the earth.
Very good.
I love that so much.
Thank you.
It's like, you just get the occasional ghost, which is also some sort of space rock. Fun.
Yeah. They do have these ghostly tails that kind of follow them as they go around the sun, because the sun is like melting the icy comets, and that stuff has to go somewhere, so it just follows the core as it goes around.
Space is so pretty and so weird.
That's much better than ectoplasm as we think of it.
Yeah,
I like that
for
a lot.
sure.
Yes, those are the 9 worlds of Norse mythology as mapped onto the worlds in our solar system.
I love them. They're so good.
Incredible. Headcanon accepted.
Yes, absolutely. Just sticking it right there. Just I want a book about it now.
Great. I'll get started on that.
Thank you. We'll promote the shit out of it.
Oh, thanks.
I'm curious if there is a sort of analog to Yggdrasil. Because when you first started describing it as like the unknown and unknowable origin of all things, that to me is a little bit like the Big Bang, or about maybe stuff before the Big Bang that we're not sure about. But I'm curious if anything comes to mind for you about what an analog for that may be.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of analogs depending on the scale that you want to consider, like how localized do you want to be. If you want to consider all of time and space as we know it, localized to our solar system, like just when the sun formed is when time started, then I would think of Yggdrasil as what astronomers call the interstellar medium, or the ISM. It's the space between stars. And even though people say that space is very empty and like it is a vacuum, it is very sparse, there is a lot of stuff in the space between stars. Most of it is gas and dust. And the stars form from that gas and dust that exists in that nothingness. And so I feel like that's probably a pretty good analog for Yggdrasil. If you want to zoom out and think of time and space as we know it as like the entire observable universe, and you think of the Big Bang as the beginning of the world, or of like time, then you get into some, like, the realm between physics and philosophy. Like, it's very theoretical. We really can't observe the actual Big Bang because at the time of the Big Bang, the universe was so dense and so hot that photons, one, didn't exist. We had to wait for photons to actually be able to form. But even after they existed, it took several thousand years for them to be able to escape the dense cloud of the universe because it was too dense and they just kept banging into stuff.
Right.
So we can't see all the way back to the Big Bang, which means we don't know what existed before the Big Bang, which is it's like very difficult to imagine. And I think that's super appropriate because it seems like Yggdrasil has just always been there. And you can't, in the ways that we think of and in the vocabulary that we have, you can't think of a time or just like concept that existed before Yggdrasil or before the Big Bang. So
science I wish I knew more about it, because every time I hear science facts, I'm just like, that is the most interesting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'm sure if I like understood the building blocks of it, it would make total sense to me. But just
no, it doesn't make total sense
at all. Okay, great.
I think if you ever hear someone say that they totally understand science, especially like quantum stuff or things at the beginning of the universe, they are either lying or way too full of themselves to be believed.
I imagine probably the latter a lot of the times.
Yeah. Oh man, but if no one's around to call them on it, what are they going to do?
It's as philosophical as I imagine theoretical physics and astrophysics.
What happened before time?
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on or cover?
No, I don't think so. I think that like cosmology myths are super cool. I talked a little bit earlier about what my thesis ended up being, but I had a lot of different ideas for what my thesis in college could have been. And one of them was looking at different cosmology or creation myths from around the world and teasing out areas that were like weirdly accurate. And there are definitely parts of Norse cosmology that are just like weirdly accurate, like the life as we know it springing up from this primordial ooze between Muspelheim and Niflheim, where it was just the right temperature for life to start. Astronomers talk about the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone around stars all the time, where the temperature is just right for liquid water to exist. And so that's just one instance that I can think of off the top of my head where they really got it right, even though they had no way of actually observing other solar systems forming or a star being born or things like that.
It's very cool. I do love when we talk about mythology on the show and stuff like that, the kind of idea that the human experience in a lot of ways is universal, and that's why we see the same myths told over and over across the world, depending on no matter what the culture is. So I love that idea of like humans understanding stuff enough to get it very close to accurate. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. And it reminds me too why, poetry and science are not mutually exclusive. And in fact, they complement each other really well. Thank you. And when people talk sometimes about Or like when I describe spirits or people are talking about like mythology or religion, they're like, oh, okay, well, do you talk about like true stuff? Like, do you believe it? Do you, are you debunking things? And that is, to me, like such an uninteresting perspective on all of this. And instead, understanding ways in which we get at the truth in a sideways way, or we, imagine our way to a real possibility, or we take inspiration from the world around us and expound upon like the lived and felt truth of it in a way that is poetic or invented. Like that, to me, we're talking about a continuum and like different sides of one beautiful, like multifaceted die.
Oh.
Which I think is a great way, Moiya, for you to plug your shows.
Please.
Yeah. I host a podcast called Exolore. It's a portmanteau of exoplanets. Those are planets outside of our solar system, and folklore. And on each episode, I invite expert guests to help me imagine what life and culture might be like on a different alien planet each time. We go from imagining the environment to the biology. So we've imagined like turtle people and squid people. We had a whole like race of sentient mushrooms that had this like just beautiful socialist society where everyone's needs were met and like no one was forced to do anything they didn't want to do to survive. It was really nice to explore that world.
I want to live on that planet. Come on.
Yeah.
We'll always have the mushroom planet in imagination.
Exactly. And that's really just what I do to keep myself happy right now, is imagine fictional worlds.
You also have that wonderful reverse world building on your YouTube channel.
Yes, I totally forgot. Thank you. So in the reverse world building series, I take mythical and legendary creatures. I look at their different features and characteristics, and I kind of reverse engineer what type of planet characteristics they could have evolved in. And so things like Pikachu, which isn't like mythical in the strictest sense, but
it is for us.
Thank you.
Pikachu is folklore at this point. Come on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I figured you would be like-minded on that. So like what type of planet would you have to evolve on to like get the ability to store and discharge electricity from your cheeks? Or like why do they recharge at night instead of during the day? Because there are electric creatures here on Earth. Electric eel is like a very well-known one, but there's a type of hornet that can store electricity in its back, but it charges from UV light from the sun. So like what's going on there?
There's an electric hornet in the world? What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It uses electricity. It's almost photosynthetic. Like it still eats to get most of its energy, but it stores electricity to do some of its necessary bodily functions.
That is so cool.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So good.
And you can find links to both of those in the show notes of this episode.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Moiya, thank you so much for joining us and teaching us and helping us to imagine these incredible worlds and possibilities.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I've been listening to the show for so long, and it's like really nice to hear your voices, but have them directed at me. I'm fangirling right now. Yeah.
Listen, same.
Same as well. And everybody, remember, no matter what planet you find yourself on, just think.
Stay creepy.
Stay cool. Thanks again to our sponsors. At sunsoil.com/spirits, you will get 30% off your first order. At betterhelp.com/spirits, you'll get 10% off your first month of secure online counseling. And at thirdlove.com/spirits, you'll get 15% off your first order. Spirits was created by Amanda McLaughlin, Julia Shafini, and Eric Schneider, with music by Kevin MacLeod and visual design by Allison Wakeman.
Keep up with all things creepy and cool by following us at Spirits Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. We also have all of our episode transcripts, guest appearances, and merch on our website, as well as a form to send us your urban legends at spiritspodcast.com.
Join our member community on Patreon, patreon.com/spiritspodcast, for all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff. Just $1 gets you access to audio extras with so much more available too. Recipe cards, director's commentaries, exclusive merch, and real physical gifts.
We are a founding member of Multitude, a collective of independent audio professionals. If you like spirits, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
And above all else, if you liked what you heard today, please share us with your friends. That is the very best way to help us keep on growing.
Thank you so much for listening. Till next time.